All right. Good evening and good night, and welcome to the It's Your Perspective Talk Show. It is Thursday, December 3rd, 2015. My name is David, a.k.a. Kimba, a.k.a. Christian. Just want to say that tonight is this is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, weekly, 8 p.m. until. We do have a telephone number tonight, 340-201-9005. You can also text us on that number as well. Most importantly, though, you have to go to our website, streaminglivefromthevi.com. Go to that website tonight. We do have a special guest, very, very special guest in the studio tonight again. We also have email. Email address is streaminglivefromthevi@yahoo.com. We are in the high-tech, low-tech studio, as our guest already knows, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. No radio, no TV, internet only. Which means you have to get your smartphone, your Android, your Apple, your iPad, your tablet, your Mac, or your Windows PC. Open up your browser, type in streaminglivefromthevi.com, and you'll be able to see the show tonight. What else we got? All our shows, our recorded live shows, are on YouTube and Ustream.tv. Go to our channel, It's Your Perspective Talk Show. You'll be able to see all our shows there. We're hitting right around 250 shows, so check them out. We've had an opportunity to talk to many people, many guests. I want to say thank you to all of them for coming on our show. And our guest tonight has been on many times as he continues on here, and I'll tell you who he is just in a minute. Definitely want to give a shout out to CHS class of 1982. Big ups to that whole entourage there. Big ups to Vanessa, Julie, Charisse. And as I said earlier, to all our past guests for helping us out. Definitely want to give a shout out to Audrey Brown, Big Disco. Who else has helped here? Many others have helped co-hosting the show as well. Please forgive me. I should have your names written down, but I don't. But you know who you are. I just want to say thank you for helping us out for sure. We're on Twitter as well. Hit us up at VI Perspective. Tweet with us there. We're moving straight forward and up. The show's mission is just to inform, entertain, and empower everyone. And as we move on here, I just want to quickly introduce our guest, author Gary James. There he is right there. Wave to the crowd, Gary. You are live and direct, streaming out to the world, all over the place. It's the hottest show in town.
Like that.
Hands down or hands up, whatever way you want to look at it. And so, Gary, you're back. Gary's here. He's in his season 2. Episode 2, episode 3,
and don't episode 4.
Is 4 today?
Yeah, today is 4.
I'm sorry,
it's 4.
Episode 4. You know, I'm sorry.
And you would be remiss if you didn't mention that I launched your first show.
Yes. Yeah, Gary was here from the very beginning. April of 2014.
That's right.
And April of 2016, we'll have 2 years doing this show. I just want to once again thank all our guests. Special shout out to Gary. He was here from the beginning and still continues to come here every other week to do to enlighten us, inform us, educate us. And so, Gary, what you got tonight, man?
Oh man, I want to follow up on some stuff from last week, but I'm pleased to report some real positive feedback from the previous conversation. I got compliments, invitations, and engaged in many inspiring conversations. So thank you. And I appreciate experiencing the contrast from the earlier feedback.
Okay.
But controversy is good. Being thought-provoking and stimulating is very important. So we're going to continue to do that. And there's so much going on in the world to talk about. Events in the Middle East, Africa, the United States, and Europe. All of them offer a multitude of subjects and topics and issues to talk about. And of course, race in America, race and the phenomenon of race in America also continues to be a subject of great controversy. And so we'll be looking into the race question as well in the near future. But as it will probably emerge in current events, as it usually does. But I want to direct our attention, continues to direct our attention to electoral politics in a comparative way between or in New York City, and the Virgin Islands, because of this unique relationship that we've had since, 1917. So the comparison is made in terms of the electoral political structure and infrastructure. And during our previous conversation, you may remember that I asserted that America didn't have a two-party system, as many think. America has a two-party structure, so and not a two-party system. So I want to develop that a little further during our conversation this evening. And perhaps some things might be a revelation to some. But most of the citizenry are oriented to electoral politics every other year. There's elections every other year, and they occur on the even year, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. So in New York City, for example, in New York, the legislature, state legislature, is elected every 2 years, while the governor is elected every 4 years. And likewise, the House of Representatives in, of course, Congress is elected every 2 years, while the president is elected every 4 years. Although U.S. senators have a 6-year term, they're still elected on the even year, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. But in reality, some of us know that elections in the states occur every year. Each and every year, there is an election in the United States. And the odd year election is called off-year election. And the off-year election doesn't involve a general election. It involves a primary election. And so the off-year election is an election that determines the nature of the policies of the particular political party, and it also determines the nature of the political personalities prominent in the party and the issues that the party advances. And so the off-year election contest occurs in the Democratic as well as the Republican parties. And this off-year primary election determines district leaders, the district leader and co-leader in the assembly district. Every state in the Union is divided into election, or rather assembly districts. In Harlem, for example, which is smaller in geography than St. Croix, has maybe 50 assembly districts. And so things are cut that tight. And each assembly district has a district leader and a co-leader of the Republican and the Democratic Party. And so the off-year election is where political power, political influence resides. The district leaders and the policies are determined at that level, and the people who participate at that level in terms of the election and other internal stuff are party operatives, political operatives, and candidates, or those economic interests that finance elections, or members of interest groups that advance certain positions that politicians carry. So essentially, assembly districts are the infrastructure of the electoral system that both parties uphold. And as I mentioned, only political operatives and candidates engage this off-year election process. The general voting public does not engage in this inner circle political scenario. District leaders and co-leaders are the manpower that manage the election sites. Both parties have their district and co-leaders. They have poll inspectors and various other personnel that are required to pull off an election. And each party has that. And that's why it is a structure of Democrats and Republicans that we have in America, because there are any number of political parties. We can get into that point later, but I wanted just to emphasize that power politics occurs at the district leader level and at the party primary level. And we, as African Americans, generally don't participate at that level. We've never participated at that level. And so this is the reason why I maintain that we have thus far, despite the various achievements in the 19th and 20th century, we have thus far been political pawns in the process. We've had an emotional relationship with the parties of the process. And we have never engaged in party primary politics. Therefore, we remain on the surface, on the periphery, but not in the power position that we need to be in, which is the primary reason why the gains that were achieved in the 19th century vis-a-vis Reconstruction. That's why they were lost, because we could not sustain them because of the level of politics that we were engaged in. And similarly, in the modern civil rights era, although we achieved storybook statutory and political developments, we could not sustain those developments because of how we did politics. We were emotionally engaged and we were political pawns, and we did not finance the civil rights movement. White liberals financed the civil rights movement. So when they decided that we did what we could and started holding back the money, this was during 1967, 1968, the civil rights era went down the tubes, you see. And so what's talked about these days in terms of civil rights is very romantic, has nothing to do with what occurred then. But the civil rights narrative these days is of a circumstance that never occurred. The civil rights movement was very nuanced. It was a lot of different things going on. And the fact remains, the powers that be had a problem with the civil rights movement when it emerged, as it emerged. What caused them to reconsider their position on civil rights was the fact that during the heyday of civil rights, the Black Power movement, the Black consciousness movement occurred. And the white and black folk who were engaged in that movement, that aspect of the movement, which was primarily youthful, those folk were not down with non-violence. They were down with revolution, you see. And so the militant black in particular emerged during the civil rights era. First, it was the youth component of the civil rights era. Like, for example, SNCC was a component of the civil rights era. It was the youth component of the civil rights era. But SNCC, during the Stokely era, decided not to follow nonviolence anymore because a lot of other things were happening in the world. And so the youth began to engage in violent revolution and militant activity. And so that changed the popular narrative with the powers that be. All of a sudden, the civil rights guys were palatable. They became responsible Negroes. And so the powers that be began to support responsible Negroes, and responsible Negroes denounced and decried black militants, black power, black militancy. And so that was a dynamic that occurred during the demise of the civil rights movement and the ascendance of black militancy, black power. And so that was a big part of what was going on in the 1970s. And so civil rights became vogue in order to mitigate against these black power, black militant folk. And so there was a juxtaposition between black militants and responsible Negroes. And we know who got the support: the responsible Negroes. And we know what happened to black power and the advocates of black power. That's clear, you know. And I'm speaking as an expert witness because I rolled with a lot of those dudes. I knew of them and they knew of me because I was a part of that era, and I was within those nuance operations that were a part of the process. So I know what went down. It was a juxtaposition between the responsible Negroes and the black power advocates. And the demise of black power occurred at that time. And the ascendancy of civil rights and civil rights leadership came to the fore. And what we fail to understand sufficiently is that black leadership became or the civil rights became the archetype for acceptable black political leadership. And that's where we are now. And civil rights leaders, elected and unelected, are the orthodoxy, the political orthodoxy that determines black leadership. So if you, up until the advent of Barack Obama, if you wanted to get into the political process, you had to virtually kiss the hand of the civil rights orthodoxy, which included the NAACP, the Urban League, you see, and those standard bearers of civil rights. But those were and remain responsible Negroes. And they were and remain the archetype of how politics is done, electoral politics. And they maintain the relationship, the emotional relationship with party politics, you see. And Democrats are friends and Republicans are enemies. And that's the juxtaposition, you see. And that is determined at the general election level. And so that's where we stay. And in terms of the Republican Party, they hate black people. They're racist. That's a whole nother question that we'll get into. But the point is, it's not about whether they like us or not. It's to what extent you are strategically organized and deployed to require respect. That's what the political process is about. And we, the black community, we don't require respect, political respect, because of how we have been playing the process. We've been playing the process as though we are neophytes. So we just want to make the point that the power positions occur at the district leader level, and we're not playing politics at the district leader or primary election level. We don't do primary politics. And that is the big deficit that we have as voters. And that is the reason why we are the oldest minority in the United States of America, and we are the weakest minority in America in terms of political influence and leverage as compared to all other minorities. And we get duped by stuff, you know. And so the district leader structure process is the entry-level procedure, entry-level process to real politics. But the way to enter that is a tightly held secret. That's not something that the general public knows or can find out. It's a tightly held secret within party politics. And if you are sufficiently sophisticated to pierce the inner circle that they have as an insurgent candidate for district leader or for some elective office, some public elective office. The district leaders are not seen. You know, other elected offices are seen. But the point is, if you are sophisticated enough to advance to be a legal candidate for district leader or public office, you got to worry about downfield interference because they control the internal process. And you could get kicked off you will get kicked off the ballot for some technical reason if you're not sufficiently prepared for that battle. And if you are sufficiently prepared for that technical scenario, which will come down, you will need a legal war chest because they could be dead wrong, but they could initiate a legal action that you will need a financial war chest in order to defend, you see. And so the way to power within the party politics is a tightly guarded secret among blacks and whites. See, because it's not just black folk who are duped, who've been deceived in terms of the political process. Most of the people are in that same state, you see. And so this is not something that is peculiar to black folk, although we got stuff that's peculiar to us. The general political quagmire that we're in is not unique to us. But we have a unique way of carrying on circular conversations about how we get out of this. And there is nothing on the horizon that anyone has said in terms of black leadership. There is nothing in terms of a discernible strategy or corrective action that we can look forward to underway. You see, it's not happening. But we got a beef with this party and a great friendship with that party, and none of them are delivering for us, and we are in our own way in terms of dealing with that. So the way in which you get to play power politics is a fiercely guarded secret, and it is not something that is denied us because of our quote-unquote race. Is denied us by the anointed leadership that we have inherited, who view their position as coveted, and as gatekeepers, they are the leaders. They are the elite who lead the subjects, or otherwise determine who is capable of this or that. And so that's a major problem that we have. And we're talking about these things so we could perhaps come up with another approach to consider. So what we have is a two-party structure. And the two-party structure is a very sophisticated proposition. And the idea of America as a democracy, again, is a misleading and a gross deception. It's misinformation. America, I want to reiterate, has a Republican form of government, and that is a sophisticated form of government, and that is why we were talking about the district leadership, how that scenario works out. So in order to have a Republican form of government operate in your behalf, you have to know what the components are and how to operate within those components and how to fashion an initiative on your behalf. And that's something that we don't do, and it is very easy to understand why it is not done, because we are operating information that cannot get us to where we need to go. America can get away with lip service to democracy because the popular notion of democracy is a government where you have the right to vote and there are free and fair elections. And so there's a general perception that that is what a democracy is about. And so the fact is, a democracy has a number of weaknesses in it, which is why the founders of America came to the conclusion that the Republican form of government is the best way to structure the American experiment, and democracies are governments that would be subject to manipulation by Republican form of governments. If you look at all of the advanced governments in the world, they're republics. But they talk as though they are democracies because they are floating the idea to the public that that is the panacea. That is the way in which modern societies are designed. And they don't challenge that in any way. And they give the impression that these industrialized governments are democracies, but they are republics. And the democracies is democracy, or the various democracies are relative. You know, you have one-party democracies, you have religious democracies, you have social democracies. So this is a term that is used by many for their own purposes, and it's a grand deception that we have to look forward to. But we need to be mindful of how tricky the Republican form of government can be. And it's complex, and it is duplicitous as the English language. And so these are ideas that we have to really be mindful of as we come up with how we need to move forward. Now, back in the day when I joined the staff of the National Welfare Rights Organization, we were given a plan by the leader of the organization, George Wiley. And the plan was designed to get funding for the few organizing staff that were brought on board in addition to myself. Now, the plan was to, well, let me put it this way. You recall the name of Richard Nixon. Vice President Nixon in '66 was considering a run for president. And on his platform, his main plank in his platform was welfare reform. So Nixon developed a welfare reform plan, which was called the Work Incentive Program. WIP was the acronym. George mentioned to us that the plan was to engage in a voter registration and education national initiative campaign directed at Richard Nixon. And so we used the acronym WIP, Work Incentive Program, as Nixon's whip. So the discussion was that Nixon, in order to run for president, wanted to whip welfare mothers in place by denying certain benefits. And if you recall, back in those days, many might not be old enough to recall, but they used to bring horses out against demonstrators and so forth. And they used to do that religiously with welfare mothers. Anyway, because of the reputation of the National Welfare Rights Organization, Nixon's people heard about the National Voter Registration Plan. And in order to protect their interests, they began to negotiate with George and his team, and we ended up with a grant for $1.5 million to evaluate Nixon's work incentive plan. Now, the objective was not to evaluate the plan as much as the objective was to develop a budget in order to organize. And we got the budget. And there was an initiative put in place to organize within the Republican Party. similar to how it was done in the Democratic Party. What happened in the Democratic Party was the party was infiltrated, and the social conservatives that ran the party were displaced by the numbers of whites and blacks engaged in the party. And we were able to take over the party. Well, I say we, not we as much as it was the leaders of the liberal and progressive wing of the party. With the troops, with the pawns, we were able to displace the conservatives who ran the party, see, and many of whom were Ku Klux Klan members and other kind of white supremacist members. We were able to displace them from the party. And that is what transitioned the party in 1968 to what it is now, a quote-unquote, a liberal progressive party. So the objective of getting that budget was to do a similar thing with the Republican Party, in the Republican Party. Now, what developed was that George, who was a bright dude, he was a PhD in chemistry. George was out on the Potomac on his boat and disappeared. This was 1970. The word was, I don't actually know if he was ever found, but the word was that somehow he fell off his boat. You see? So that initiative, that follow-up from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party never went down. There was a few of us who did what we were supposed to do in our particular area. I'm from New York, so I did my thing in New York. And the lessons that I learned from that process will remain profound to me, because I learned some very interesting political lessons which I shared. And that was the nature of politics and the strange political bedfellow relationships. Now, I talked about district leaderships and how they occur. And both parties have their contingent of district leaders in that district. Now, let's say for argument's sake, there are 100 district leaders in Harlem, for example. And that's both sides. I mean, 100 Democrats, 100 Republicans. Now, what I found as a leader in the grassroots activist wing of the Republican Party, what I found was that "75% of the Republican district leaders were, in fact, Democratic district leaders." See? So, out of roughly 200 of the infrastructure that runs these campaigns, the Republican Party had only 25. So it's like, I'm saying, well, what is this about? You see? So, I know my way around. So now what I found out, well, let me jump let me fast forward. Congressman Rangel is retiring. He won't run next year after 40 years. He was first elected in 1970. From 1970 to 2000, to the year 2000, 30 years, Congressman Rangel ran as a Democrat and was also on the Republican ballot. Now, Congressman Rangel is the dean of the New York congressional delegation and chief Republican basher. So what is this? What's going on here? And I'm well placed, and the GOP county leader told me categorically, he said, well, we get more patronage from Congressman Rangel than we do Congressman Green, who was the Republican in the Silk Stocking District. The Republican Party never ran a Republican candidate against Charlie Rangel. So what's going on here? What are they telling us? You see? Now, when you look at that further, the county chairman, that was Roy Goodman at the time, he was also a state senator. Now, the Democrats outnumber the Republicans in New York from 5-1 to 7-1. So numerically, Republicans can't win unless they have a strange bedfellow deal. You see? Now, all the time that the county is compromised to the Democratic power machine, there's black Republicans in there. Now, they don't want to beef about the fact that the GOP powers that be are dealing with black Democrats as opposed to black Republicans. Because the logic is, hey, if we want to beat them, we need to build in the... But there are reasons why that doesn't occur. There are deceptions going on that you can blame on race, but it's beyond race. Race is a whole nother category, which we will get into. Not now, but that is a whole nother thing. There are structural problems, and we are in our own way. You see, because you have Republican district leaders who were satisfied with simply smiling and being on the set. And they are gatekeepers for the status quo of zero. And they, in my view, get nothing for cutting off organic community-based leadership at the knees. They don't get nothing for that, but that's what they do. You see? So, I mean, these are generalities, but for the most part, that is what occurs. And I'm not saying this because I heard that. I'm telling you this because this is what I know. You see? This is how I've rolled and how I roll in New York City. And I have a colorful political history. And I won't get into those details. But That's what's going on there. But despite that numerical disadvantage, Republicans can win the governor's house and they can win the mayoral. Why? Because there's some stuff going on clandestine. We are engaged in misinformation as the electorate. We are playing political checkers instead of political chess. And we are apparently satisfied with that. You see? So these are things that I think it's important to talk about. But again, this is confined to the politics in New York State. I want to talk about politics locally here in St. Croix. We're not going to do that tonight because I can see where we're going with the time. And I'm not going to talk about personality politics here or evaluate anybody or anything. My comments in terms of Virgin Island politics will be on the structure as I know it. Comparing here, to there, and party politics as I know it. I don't know the players down here, and I won't profess to know, and so I won't comment on local politicians. But I will make and give an overview of some stuff, and hopefully that will be of value to some. But perhaps a larger point, going back to my theme this evening, perhaps a larger point is the state of Republican politics today. Now, apropos to what some of the things I've said, the Republican Party vis-a-vis the social conservative agenda is in a civil war. See, what we don't realize is that you don't need unity. You don't need everybody. All you need is a critical mass. Critical mass is just enough of a percentage of people who know what they're doing and who have a capacity to sustain an initiative. And there's a great opportunity to prevail. Now, what happened with the Republican Party is these social conservatives, the new rendition vis-a-vis the Tea Party, it's a few guys. It's a few people. A critical mass. A few people hijack the whole thing. Because they know what they're doing. They know about that district leadership process. They know about campaign financing. And they know how to strategically organize and deploy in target states. That's all they did. Ain't 20% Republicans Tea Party. At most, they're 20%. Let's say that for argument's sake. So there's 80% of mainstream Republicans who have lost control of their party. They cannot control the narrative. The Tea Party is talking about conservative. You have to prove your conservative credentials. All of the presidential candidates is talking conservative. The Republican Party has never been conservative. It's not conservative now. You got some cats who hijacked it and talking a conservative agenda, a bygone agenda, because they can't run across the street. None of those guys and girls can run across the street and win successfully with that agenda, because you can't win a general election with that agenda. But they're talking about you have to prove your conservative credentials. What about proving Republican credentials? They're taking the whole thing another place, and people don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You see, you just hate these guys because they're racist, they're supremacists, they don't care about all of that. They don't even care about winning. They care about taking their position to the wall, okay? And there is no one in a position, not even the mainstream, to successfully defeat them, because the mainstream has acquiesced to the social conservative agenda. Some of them was ambivalent about it. Some of them was down with it on the down low. But now they can't do nothing with those guys. President Johnson in 1968 said that because of civil rights, the Democrats was going to lose the South. That's what happened. They lost the South, and the, what they call the Blue Dog Democrats, conservative Democrats, moved over, or some of them moved over to the Republican Party. Some of them remained. And the other one they call boll weevils. Mm-hmm. They was looking for a home. See, so they over. So you got the Republican Party now is Blue Dog Democrats and boll weevils. You see? And then you had your candidate, what's his name? Senator Goldwater, who carried the conservative banner. And that was the beginning of the conservatives' political assault on the Republican Party to change the face of the party. In the 19th century, the Republican Party was eclectic, was diverse, was progressive, was radical. It was about abolition of slavery. How more radical can you be? You see, the Democrats were those other guys. And now they changed positions. But black folk don't want to talk to a Republican. You see, so there's a learning curve that we need to engage. Don't beef about the Tea Party and how racist they are. Look at what they did. Do something. What about that? You see? Don't take on the nature or the popular nature of these parties. They change. They change according to who infiltrates and influences the brand one way or the other. That's what it's about. But if you don't believe you have the agency, then you can't do it. If you believe you have to be politically correct, it's not going to be done. If you believe we need to continue doing politics, electoral politics, the way we're doing it, you got some serious issues. If you think America is the quintessential democracy, you are thoroughly misguided. If you are not trying to understand the best way to impact the electoral process by developing a more sophisticated understanding and application and strategic application of the electoral process, we ain't never going nowhere. That's how that works. Now, I'm not deluded enough to believe that because I'm saying some things, things are going to change, or I'm going to begin some kind of movement. I'm not a leader. I'm a hell of a co-pilot. That's what I'm about, you know. But, so I'm not deluded that anything dramatic is going to happen anytime soon. But I'm convinced that there's some stuff that's going to happen. You know, I happen to be focused on who I could focus on. I'm focused on my children and grandchildren, primarily my grandchildren, because they are what I call the millennial generation. Those born after the year 2000 are, in my view, millennials. So I'm doing stuff, I'm creating a body of information vis-a-vis books and programs and some other kind of applications for my grandchildren, because I want them to be able to make sense of some of this stuff. So I'm going to use the rest of my time to unstack some stuff, deconstruct some stuff, unscramble some stuff, set some things in motion, you see, and prepare their database. My focus is on them because their parents, my 6 wonderful children, are in the world and rumbling, and they're doing a pretty good job, but they can't do what needs to be done because of the challenges associated with being an adult, a black adult in today's society, and with children. I got 5 grandchildren. I have 3 boys, 3 girls, children, and 5 grandchildren. 3 boys and two girls. And so that's my concentration, you know. And so if we can do something, if my generation and Brother Kimby's generation and a few others start something, maybe some other dudes coming behind us will finish.
And finish, right? Finish the task at hand.
But I'm not deluded that anything substantial is going to happen in the way of changing how politics is done. Because we're not there. We're not about changing anything. We are satisfied with our emotional scenario. We are satisfied with the checker game that we're into, jumping this and jumping that and getting the king and so forth. You know, we don't have a particular interest in the application that is required or the learning curve that's required to do politics different. You see? And a lot of the stuff we operate really doesn't go beyond the surface, and we're entertained and engaged by it, you know. And so we're in the world and of the world, and, you know, that's how it is. And if that's cool, if you feel satisfied and comfortable with that, you're good to go. But if you are not comfortable with that, and things look strange to you down the line, then you need to consider some other stuff. And so we look forward to developing some other stuff for consideration. Our time is closing, so I want to just make the point that that's American stateside politics, and next time we'll talk a little about local politics. Let me just say in closing, when I first relocated, I decided that I wasn't going to get involved in local politics. I was going to maintain my activity and voting status in the States. But after I started doing a little research, not on the politics, not on the local politics, but on my ancestry here. I was born in the States, my father was born here, and we go way back into slavery. And so I've developed a special affinity, an organic relationship to my ancestral home, where my DNA was established in the Western Hemisphere. So as a result of doing some research at WIM and understanding my connection here, I got very emotionally involved in some stuff, and actually had to put down some of the projects that I had come down to work on. I had to write a book. I wrote a book, Transfer Day, discussing some of my discovery in terms of my family ancestry. And what I learned in terms of local history, I had no idea of how rich the history is in the Virgin Islands. And I had no idea of that, and I'm an educated person, but I had no idea of the dynamic role that the Virgin Islands played in modern America, and the role that Virgin Islanders played as the vanguard of the Harlem Renaissance. You know, these were some very, very interesting and profound things for me. So there are many other things, but my point is, I developed this affinity and organic relationship to the point where I decided that I was going to become a voting citizen here in the Virgin Islands. My conclusion was that my vote would be more consequential here than it would be to continue it in the States. So I've had an epiphany, but I'm smart enough to know my limitations. And I had enough of a peripheral or cursory view of local politics to realize that I don't need to get engaged in that blood sport. directly. But as a person who has become of age and considers that I have a modicum of wisdom, I'm prepared now to engage local politics in a little more comprehensive way than I initially thought. So I'm going to talk about that next time. So time is up. I don't want to keep you guys any longer. So I appreciate you coming and participating in the conversation tonight. Thank you.
All right. That's author Gary James. He's here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I want to say thank you again for coming out to the studio and spending some time. And Gary will be back on December 17th, 2 weeks from today. Same time. It'll be Season 2, Episode 5.
That's right.
8 p.m. Until about 9:15. He'll be here continuing on with his conversation. Just want to say thank you again, Gary, for coming out.
Thank you, brother. I just love what you guys have put together here, and you're still expanding, you know.
Yes, we are.
I mean, I just love you for what you're doing, and there's nothing you can do about it.
All right, man. Well, so thank you. I just want to say quickly that this is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until. It's about 9:18 p.m. today on December 3rd. That's it for us this week. We'll be back on, I think we have a show on Monday. So stay tuned for that. You'll see the posting about who the guest is on Facebook coming up here on Monday. But anyway, have a good weekend. Be safe. Stay dry. Do the right thing. And I like to always say our prayers and his blessings. When you put it all together, you get one perfect love, man. So on that note,
Amen.
We're out. Peace.
Peace.
See you then. We're out.